Reddit, what was your creepy, unexplained experience as a child? This probably has a rational explanation, but I never found out what it was. When I was 8, we lived in an apartment with very thin walls. I could hear the married couple having sex at night, all the time. It always felt funny seeing them the next day. One day I was sick and stayed home from school, but my mom still had to go to work. So I just remained alone in my bedroom, watching cartoons. I was really nauseous and drifting in and out of sleep when I heard a tapping. Initially ignored it, but the sound became rapid, more insistent. Tap 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 tap. I was too sick to care when a deep, low voice said, "Hello." I froze in bed, believing a murderer broken in, and the voice was coming from inside the apartment. But it was coming from the other side of the wall. He said lots of things. I don't remember it all. "Hello. Where are you? I'd like to meet you. Tell me where you are." I had been throwing up in the toilet all day and couldn't take any more, so I didn't respond. I burrowed further into my sheets and tried to ignore the voice. When my mom came home, she had Rocky Road ice cream because she felt sorry for me, and I was so excited about the ice cream I forgot to mention what happened. One night when I was a teenager, my whole family had gone to bed. It was around 11:30 or midnight. My bedroom door was open, and I had a clear view of the dining room table from my bedroom. Everything was quiet and the house was very dark since all the lights were off, and we all suddenly heard the distinct sound of a kitchen chair scraping across the floor with some weight behind it, as if someone was sitting in it and scooted. Everyone was in bed and the dogs were accounted for. My eyes shot open and I was petrified with fear, and my dad got up and turned the lights on to see what it was. We still can't explain it. When my brother and I were kids, our mom and grandma left us in the car one day when they ran into the supermarket. There was an old-looking car like a Lincoln or a Cadillac parked nearby. A man in a zoot suit type outfit with a feather in his hat like a cartoon pimp would wear got out and went around to the back. He opened his trunk and two ladies climbed out of the trunk, a white woman in a black dress and a black woman in a white dress. Both were formal-looking dresses. The white woman saw us looking at her and stared at us. She kept staring at us for a minute. It was kind of an intense stare but also empty at the same time. I remember feeling nervous, so I told my brother to look away. He asked me why and I said just do it, and we both looked away. I have no idea, but I remember freaking out, and for some reason really didn't he want the man to see us too. I kind of sunk down into the floor for a few minutes and they were gone when I looked again. I asked my brother if he saw where they went and he said they went in the store. We agreed that was weird. We told my mom when she got back, but she didn't believe it and she and my grandma laughed. She said if anyone dressed like that was in the store she would have seen them. My brother and I have talked about it a few times since. He still remembers it clearly and so do I, but he says he didn't feel scared like I did, just thought it was really strange. I still feel kind of weird when I think about it. I had this couch with a couple springs missing. They popped up and my dad removed them from the inside, so you sat really low on that section, almost as if you were getting sucked into the couch. My brother and I used to fight over who had to sit there when watching TV downstairs. I usually made him do it. One day I had some friends over for a sleepover. I was on the couch, my buddies were on yoga mats on the floor. I felt a kick in the night, thought it was one of my buddies and told him politely to fuck off. Another kick, right under my back. How is that possible? I got up, turned on the lamp, and my buddies were both passed out. I went back to the couch, took off the cushion and looked. Nothing. Get back on the couch, turn off lamp behind me and try to go to sleep. It must have been only a few minutes when my one friend whispered who the other dude was when I turned on the light. I said, "What?" He said something like, "You turned on the lamp." I was pretending I was asleep because I thought it was your parents. I saw someone standing behind the couch. It wasn't your dad. We then all got freaked out, ran upstairs to my room and slept in there instead of the basement. A few weeks later I get home from school and my dad is tossing the couch in the back of his pickup. I assumed he bought a new one, but no, he said he was sick of seeing it in his house because it was his dad's, and his dad always used to rough him up when he was younger. Usually by poking him in the back where his shirt would hide the bruises. This reminds me of a time when I was at a sleepover for a girl's birthday in first grade. We all laid down in the basement to sleep, the lights were out, and we finally all stopped talking. Then in the silence I distinctly heard an old woman's voice say in whispered agony, "Help, kids." I asked if anyone else heard that, thinking one of them did it to scare us, and everyone started freaking out. Some kids were so scared they wanted to go home. My mom was so mad at me the next morning when she found out that I ruined the birthday party, but to this day I can still remember the voice and I swear I didn't make it up. Shared before, but still the creepiest thing from probably my whole damn life. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time at my grandma's house. Both of my parents worked long hours, so her place became like a second home. She was a tough old woman. Rail thin, but strong. Sometimes I'd watch her going about her routine and wonder if she was some kind of a witch. She just had a witchy way about her. But, of course, that might just be what resourcefulness looks like to a kid. Anyway, her house didn't help. It was old. Everything in it was old, and it was dark. I don't know how best to describe it other than to say I always felt that being inside my grandma's house wasn't much different from being outside of it. In any season the windows in the house would stay jammed open with old, bent screens, which had to be shimmed into place with old slats from some discarded louver door. Grandma had this rusty pot-belly stove right smack in the middle of her bedroom. I remember constantly dodging it as I ran through the house playing. At night, she loaded the stove with one great big chunk of hickory, and you could see the flames licking through the cracks. I'd lay on the floor with my sleeping bag, positioning myself so that the stove was in between me and Grandma's bed. Facing this direction meant that I could easily see the window at the foot of her bed. It was like a nightlight for me. Everything in that house was black at night, unless there was a window nearby. So, there I lay one night. It was chilly, and I remember having trouble sleeping because the moonlight coming through the window was so bright. It was late, which meant the stove wasn't roaring anymore. Besides my grandma's breathing, the whole house was dead silent. It was just the two of us. No one else was in the house. Without any warning, a tall black figure calmly walks from the shadows at the far side of the room. He passed between the stove and bed, across the floor just a foot from my head, and out through the doorway into the kitchen. I was petrified. Couldn't move an inch. This may sound crazy, but had I felt like a burglar was in the house, I'd like to think I would have moved. Or shouted, or something. I didn't think it was a burglar, though. No specific reason why. It just felt wrong. I don't think I fell asleep that night. All I remember is staring at the kitchen doorway, for a long, long time. When my grandma woke up, she rolled out of bed and grabbed the fire poker. I sat up and began to tell her what I saw. Like I said, I always felt like my grandma was a little bit witchy. After I finished telling her about the tall man, she just poked at the coals in the stove and said, "Haven't seen him in a long time." When I was little, I would hallucinate if I was sick. My mom recalls me seeing a wolf following her, but she said the one thing that used to freak her out was the two children I said I could see in the garden. I told her that they wanted me to play with them, to which my mom would look out into the front garden and see nothing. One night I was sleepwalking, which wasn't something that I do. I was about 5 and it wasn't that late, so my parents were in the living room. I remember waking up with tears in my face and my mom hugging me while my dad was walking around the garden and looking around. From what my mom tells me, she and my dad heard me screaming and ran to find I wasn't in my bed and saw the front door open, and outside I was kneeling on the ground screaming and crying. Apparently I was shouted, "Leave me alone," and my arms were pushing at air as if I was trying to bat something away. To this day the front door is locked and the keys are hung up on a hook. My mom swears that I was in the same spot that I always said the two children were standing. I had something similar happen with me when I was younger. Apparently one night I went into my mom's room and told her there was a little boy who wanted me to play, but I didn't want to. She told me to tell him I didn't want to, but he wouldn't listen till I yelled it, at which point I just said he's gone now, and went back to bed, and I have no memory of ever doing it. I've told this before, but hey. When I was 12 I had a dream that I was standing near a house that was on fire. There was a little girl there who was much younger than me, about 2 years old. I thought she was there alone, so I held her hand, hoping to find her parents. She was watching the firemen. Eventually, one of the firemen came over to me and, for some reason, told me that I would one day have 2 children, boy and girl twins, and they would be my only children. He then took the little girl's hand and she walked away with him. This dream felt like no other I'd ever had, and because of that, I was absolutely convinced that it was real. Many times in the years that followed I told people about the dream, or that I knew that one day, I would be the father of boy-girl twins. Multiple people in my life have confirmed that I told them this. When I was 31 I got married. She gave birth to our boy-girl twins a few years later. Her father was the fire chief of the town I grew up in. It wasn't until my children were born that I made a connection about my wife's father being a fireman, nor the fact that she was 10 years younger than me. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily uploads. If you have any stories, make sure to put them in the comments below.